Welcome to episode 18 of the Streamlined Motherhood podcast. I'm Kate Saffel, your host, and today we're covering all things slow living. If you're tired of feeling overly busy, stretched, and wondering if this is how family life will always be, take a deep breath and join me for this episode. This is the Streamlined Motherhood podcast. I'm Kate Saffel, certified simplicity parenting family life coach and mom of 3. I'm here to guide you back to your intuition, to help you overcome daily overwhelm, and to start feeling confident in the mama and woman you are. Each episode, I'll share tips and encouragement for thriving on your motherhood journey, because this life you're living is way too important to put on autopilot. Slow living. I'm seeing more of it popping up on social media, and yet I look around me and see that most families, including mine, feel anything but slow and peaceful. What is slow living even, and is it possible for the modern family to achieve? What I want to offer you in this episode is a glimpse into why slow living might be a balm to your overwhelmed soul, and also some thoughts on how to move in that direction even if your days remain full. It is possible. So there's this blog I follow. It's actually the only one I follow, or maybe just one of a couple. And it's a family that has been traveling full time for, probably the last 11 years or so. They have 2 kids and have spent a big chunk of that time on the water living on a boat. I love reading this blog because their kids' childhood reminds me so much of mine. Well, minus the sailing around the world part. The kids play outdoors all day long, get dirty, explore, and have freedom to take risks. As far as I can tell, they have no technology, little to no toys, parents for playmates, and the occasional traveling friend meetup. And yet these kids look so darn happy and, well, like kids. They're not the only family I know that are choosing to opt out of conventional modern family life. I know of families traveling the U.S. in a vintage Airstream, or homeschooling their kids off-grid on acreage, and even more families quietly stepping out of the status quo and into a beautifully slow life. If you're unfamiliar with the slow living movement, in a nutshell, it is the intentional act of lessening the pace of family life to create more peace within the home, connection among the family, and space for children to enjoy their childhood. Slow living is a tiny act of rebellion, a way of carving a line in the sand that these are our values and we are choosing to live by them. Slow living is not homeschooling or travel or having the perfect Instagrammable house. None of that really matters without heart and purpose behind it. I first became enamored with the idea of slow living when my oldest was a baby. At the time, I was up to my eyeballs in moving boxes. We had just moved into our first home, a rental really, in South Bend, Indiana. My daughter was newly 2 months old. We were in a brand new community after a cross-country move for my husband's first job out of grad school, and the basement was stacked floor to ceiling with boxes. Maybe you've heard me tell this story before, but bear with me. I felt so totally overwhelmed about this stuff, so instead of actually dealing with it, I began reading blogs about people living in school buses or on homesteads or unschooling their kids. You know, all of those so-called alternative ways of living that I wasn't seeing around me in my very traditional historical neighborhood. I didn't know anyone choosing a remarkably different life like that. My husband and I were on a very different path, one that would, spoiler alert, create a lot of busyness and unnecessary chaos for us for many years to come. But for some reason, I was so very drawn to these simple lifestyles. And maybe you can relate. As a kid, I was obsessed with the Little House on the Prairie books, and my childhood was pretty much the epitome of slow. We played all day outdoors in all 4 seasons, rarely watched any TV, and I would spend countless afternoons lost in a stack of books at our local library. which I rode my bike to by myself. So different than today, right? There wasn't all of the temptation to be busy back then as there seems to be now. On weekends, my parents and I would spend time together, and we loved going for drives along the lakeshore of Lake Michigan, stopping to get out to play on the beach or explore little beach towns along the way. I distinctly remember some Sunday afternoons, my dad would have the football game on, and I would be legitimately bored, reading through the remnants of the Sunday paper, looking for the comics and for the sales section to see what puppies were available. Our lifestyle meant I could be bored. I rarely took lessons of any kind, and there were very few scheduled play dates. Instead, I would usually run barefoot to the neighbors' homes to see who could play. And yes, my parents both worked. Okay. I'm recording.
I thought you were in the closet. Sorry.
It's okay.
I was thinking of it.
I thought it would keep the kids awake. I'm still recording though. I love you too. Okay, bye. Husband interruption. Okay, so where was I? Yeah. My mom worked full time once I went to kindergarten, and my dad started his own business when I was in the 4th grade. To say my parents were busy and stressed is definitely an understatement. But our lives still remained slow somehow, and I think that's the point here. It wasn't that my parents had it all figured out, but they didn't face the pressure that parents do today to keep up with social expectations. As a Simplicity Parenting family life coach, I am hyper aware of the way the tide has changed for the typical family. Days are packed to the brim with activities between school, extracurriculars, birthday parties, and normal daily chores. We're eating breakfast on the go, lunch on the go, dinner on the go, and barely able to catch a breath. In the book Simplicity Parenting by Kim John Payne, he says, "We are building our daily lives and our families on the 4 pillars of too much. Too much stuff, too many choices, too much information, and too much speed. With this level of busyness, distractions, time pressure, and clutter, mental and physical, children are robbed of the time and ease they need to explore their worlds and their emerging selves." Whew, it is powerful. Why are we all creating such a frenetic pace of life? Is it out of a scarcity mindset, believing that we need to give our kids more so that they can compete in today's world? Is it because we believe that the more we work, the more we can provide for our kids? Do we believe that if we don't do what others do, we'll look different or feel left behind? Or maybe we simply do not know how to do life differently when all of the examples we see around us show us that faster and busier must be better. But my friends, it is not better. I notice the impact of busy living in my own kids through their behavior, their tiredness, and the way the dreams they share with me center around anything but the way we're currently choosing our days. Right now, my 6-year-old daughter talks constantly about the forest land that we're going to buy and the animals that we're going to raise and the foods that we're going to make from scratch together. I don't know if that's telling or not, considering that we currently live in a city, but I do listen to her. I do hear her dreams, all of my kids. I've said this in so many episodes, but our children are so wise. Listen to them. And so in sharing all of this, I'm trying to be honest with you. I don't want to give the impression that I've got this slow living thing on lockdown. My family and I are absolutely a work in progress. Today, even my oldest called me out on being distracted and being on my phone all day. Sometimes we are that family rushing from school to dance to a birthday party and eating dinner at 8 p.m. When we have days like this, I feel the ping of knowing that it doesn't have to be that way. We are choosing it, and we can also unchoose it. There are 3 ways I see a busy pace of life showing up for many families, and you let me know which one of these really hits home for you. All 3 have for me at various times of my parenting journey. Busy living manifests through our fears, our perception of time, and cultural pressure. Let's go ahead and break this down. I hit the fears pretty hard last week on episode 17, so definitely go listen to that one if you need a refresher. How often do you make decisions for your kids out of fear instead of what your intuition or your mama instincts are saying? For example, you know your kiddos really need Saturdays to rest, but you feel guilty keeping them from enrolling in soccer, so out of fear of disappointing them, you sign them up. You might know in your heart the kind of life you really want to live, but you stay on your current path out of fear. I see this in a lot of mamas I know in my community, whether it's the mom that wants to pull her kids out of school, but is fearful she'll mess up homeschooling or isn't qualified. I see it in the mom who is so darn exhausted, and so are her kids, but she keeps signing them up for every lesson, camp, and opportunity possible out of fear that they'll miss the chance to become the next Einstein or Beethoven. I see it in the mama that wants to burn down the house because the kids have so much junk in their playroom, bedroom, living room, bathroom, other playroom, every nook and cranny in the house. But she doesn't because, well, one, she doesn't want to get arrested. But deep down, she's scared to disappoint her kids or to get questioned by people she knows as to why would she get rid of all of her kids' things. Fear is a terrible bedfellow in parenting, especially if your goal is to slow down and actually be present to the beautiful life and childhood unfolding right in front of your face. You choose what you're scared of and what you're not. Making the right choices for your family shouldn't be the things you're scared of. Okay, so the next way I see families stuck in busyness is through their perception of time. Time is such a funny concept and something I could probably devote a whole episode to. But basically, we tend to see time as being very linear and finite. We might say that we're running out of time, there isn't enough time, or that time is scarce. We tell our kids constantly to hurry up, or they'll make us late, or we also interrupt family time to say how short on time we are before we need to head to the next activity. We abuse the concept of time and believe that there is never enough. And guess what? There isn't, because that is our perception of it. Another way to look at time is that it is relative. Einstein proved that time and space are constantly changing and are not linear like Isaac Newton thought that they were. We use clocks to control our days, and yet it is really us who are limiting our time through our disbelief that there is never going to be enough. Life will never slow down for you if you don't believe it can. Something I've experimented with is not looking at the clock or even thinking about the time, but rather trusting my intuition on when we need to shift activities. This is a way to slow time down and to feel like there is more of it. We can also create space for our children to simply be kids by not constantly rushing them everywhere or saying, "Hurry up." Removing those 2 words from your vocabulary is an absolute game changer for 2 reasons. 1, you remove the anxiety and pressure that you're unintentionally putting on your kids. And 2, you allow your kids to grow in their own responsibility to manage time. Now, I know you might be thinking, well, Kate, I have a 3-year-old that is a beast at transitions and we're always late, so yes, I'm going to say hurry up. I get it, Mama. I have a little one myself. What we want to do is build extra time into our transitions so that we don't have to rush. So if we can plan to leave 20 minutes earlier than we need to, then when your little one drags her feet, you can stay calm knowing that you'll get there on time. So to wrap this one up, you have more time than you think, and especially have time to slow down your days and be more intentional with the life you're creating with your family. And finally, the last way I see families giving into busyness is through cultural pressure. We are surrounded by families all doing life very similarly, and if you go against the grain, it can result in many uncomfortable outcomes, such as unkind comments from others or flat out rejection from those in your community. Humans are so very tribal in nature, which means that if you're doing what you're expected to do, everything is great. You're in the game, my friend, but step a toe out of line, choose to parent a little bit differently, and you'll really start to feel the pressure. What makes this so especially hard is that it can cause us to doubt our decisions and that we're doing what's best for our families. I gave the example on the last episode of how we got so many interesting or unhelpful comments about our choice to travel full-time around the US in our travel trailer for a year. We had broken an unspoken rule of what raising kids today is supposed to look like, and it made people uncomfortable. Has this happened to you? I want to encourage you that although it can be painful to feel others' disappointment in you, you'll ultimately never regret investing in your children and giving them a slow childhood. When you think of your life legacy, is it to proclaim on your deathbed that your child never missed an extracurricular, or is it to say that you raised healthy and happy adults? What truly is the purpose of parenting? And it doesn't have to be all or nothing either. You can be part of this world and also choose to live slow. Whether that's prioritizing leisurely family dinners every night or committing to spending Sunday afternoons hiking together, there are so many ways to slow life down as a family. And let me tell you, there's no perfect way to do it. No way to optimize your living slowness. It may look nothing like anyone else's family life, but everything like yours. Slow living is getting intimate with your family's values and becoming who you were designed to be on this earth. It's slowing down enough to take a breath and savor the everyday joys that so often get overlooked. Slow living is the peace you've been seeking and a handhold out of the crazy pace of modern life. It's meant for the stay-at-home mom, the full-time working mom, and every type of family in between. If you believe that it's possible to slow down and create the life you dream of for your family, you can make it happen. I believe it's possible for me, and I completely believe it's possible for you. Okay, friends, thank you so much for listening to this episode. I really hope that it encouraged you. If you feel inspired by this episode, please go act on it. Change things in your family. Share this episode with your friends. Create a grassroots movement of families living intentionally, slowing down, and being present to one another. I appreciate you so much for being with me on the journey. Until next time.